Alright, this is my Illuna Apex of Wishes list. The card reads that it's a flying 6/6 with trample, and it has mutate, so you basically treat it as almost kind of like an aura spell on top of a creature, as long as it's a non-human. And then when it mutates, you look at as many cards as times as you mutated the top cards of your library. If they're permanents, you can put them straight onto the battlefield. If they're non-permanents, you can put them, place them straight into your hand. Now this deck's a bit different. We built this on stream, so here we go. That's Sea Dasher Octopus. Whenever he mutates, he gives a curiosity effect, which means that whenever they deal combat damage to a player, that you draw a card. He's a 2/2. Illuna Phoenix is another mutator. We put mutators in this list because when you mutate onto Illuna Apex of Wishes, his mutate triggers a game. So you want that. You want, if you play these mutate commanders, you want at least a few of the mutators. And MTGA gets some pretty good ones. I'd say, not the best one, but Illuna Phoenix is cool. There's kind of like a Phoenix effect where it gives flying, because they inherit the keywords and the stats on top of the card. And Illuna Phoenix is flying, and then whenever the creature gets sent to the graveyard that's non-exile, you create a feather counter, or a feather token, and then you can return the creature back. And then we put Auspicious Syrinx in, which is basically the better version of Illuna's Apex of Wishes effect. You look at cards at the top cards of your library, and for as many permanents as you pull, you put them straight to your battlefield. It's kind of like another version of the effect. Sawtooth Demolisher is a beast with an effect, where once he mutates, you pop a permanent that your opponent controls and turn it into a 3/3 creature. The Anguirus card, which is another Godzilla reference, is like Gemstone Demolisher. He destroys target artifact or enchantment when he mutates. Lord Rockus brings back a instant or sorcery, and then Migratory Greathorn, the last one we put in. It's just a land ramp card. Whenever he mutates, you look for your basic land, put it into a play tap. Genesis Ultimatum, look at the top 5 cards of your library, put any number of permanents into the battlefield, and then all the rest of them go into your hand. It's probably one of the weaker ultimatums, honestly, out of all of them. Because the best one's probably the Sultai one, which is a Murder Ultimatum. Put in counter spell, pay 2 blue, counter target spell. Counter spell means that when you counter a spell, it means that it doesn't resolve at all. Sinister Sabotage is counter target spell for 3 mana, but you also Surveil 1. Surveil 1 means you look at the top card of your library, and you can either put it in the graveyard or keep it on top. Saw It Coming is another counter spell where you can foretell it, so you can pay 2, and then when you foretell it, it only costs 1 and 1 blue. So it costs 4 mana total, that's a little bit more efficient in the long run. Negate counters target 9 creature spell. I think Negate's excellent. 9 creature spell is literally 5 out of 6 card types in the entire game, so it's never a bad thing. Whirlwind Denial can counter spells or abilities on the stack, so you can counter 3 or 4 spells at a time, because they have to pay 4 though. If they pay the 4, they counter the Whirlwind Denial, so they rescue all their spells on the stack. Wash Away is just a commander staple. It counters commanders for 1 mana, or anything that's played from not the hand for 1 mana, and then you can cleave it for 3 mana, which means you can counter target spell anywhere. Because the cleave, you read what the cleave says, and then you remove that text box on the card. Tail's End, it counters target legendary spell, or activated or triggered abilities, so that can counter abilities. So that if Planeswalker's ultimating, you can Tail's End it, and then counter that. So that's a good example of what, a big ability that's a big plus to Tail's End. And you play Tail's End in Brawl because every single commander has to be legendary. Storm's Wrath gives 4 damage to target all creatures and all Planeswalkers on the board. So the red board pretty good. So we go Burn Down the House here as our next card. If you see me play red, you'll see me play this card in literally every red deck. It's just Storm's Wrath, except it does 5 damage, or you can make 3 1/1 Devils with haste that whenever they leave the battlefield and don't get exiled, they paying something for 1. Paying means it deals 1 damage. Star of Extinction literally is just like Storm's Wrath and Burn Down the House, except it deals 20 damage to each creature and each Planeswalker, so basically eliminating the entire board mean destroyed and sent to the graveyard, so I'm just going to start calling it that from now on. Bubble comes in, deals 3 damage to each creature in each planeswalker, or it pops each artifact with a mana value 3 or less. So, we're going to Fade from History next. This is a artifact enchantment exile effect, where each player that has an artifact or enchantment gets a 2/2 bear, and then you exile the rest of the artifact enchantments on the board. This is excellent against enchantment lists, you should definitely play it. Back to Nature, it's a board wipe for enchantments, it pops all enchantments on the board. So obviously it should probably go in pretty much every green list, unless A, you're not really too worried about enchantments, or B, you're playing a lot of enchantments yourself. Because the enchantment lists, like literally once they get set up, they win the game. They're literally like the strongest decks. The value on them is insane. There's literally no way to compete with it. The only way you can hope to like contain that stuff is literally play your own board wipes. So you like pretty much have to, because all the enchantment cards are insane. We put in all the interventions. Thassa's intervention is a counter spell, so it counters target spell unless its controller pays twice X, or you look at the top X cards of your library, choose 2 of them, put them in your hand. Purplo's intervention is it deals twice X damage to target creature or planeswalker, or you make a haste elemental with X as its attack, and then it attacks 1 time and you sacrifice it at the end. Heroic Intervention gives you all your stuff hexproof and indestructible, so it protects your team. And then the green intervention is Windstorm on one side, where it deals twice X damage to flyers, and then you can blood up so many lands and put lands into your hand. Mind you, that's any land, so it's good. We put in Immortal Sun, which is probably one of the most valuable cards in the game, on 1 card. It stops planeswalkers from activating their abilities, you draw an extra card per turn, your spells cost 1 less, and your creatures have an additional 1 attack and defense. And then Kuema's Awakening is a draw enchantment, where if it exists on the board, and you draw a card, you draw an additional card at the start of your turns, but so does your opponent, unless you have the City's Blessing, then only you do. Rhystic Study, if you ever watched any sort of Magic content in like the past 5 years, you probably heard this card at least once. Whenever your opponent casts a spell, they can pay 1. If they don't, you draw a card. Either they pay the 1, or you draw a card. If you ever heard, oh, do you pay the 1? There's people making fun of Rhystic Study because of how absurd the card can actually be. So run it in every single blue deck. It is a mythic if you have to craft it, but it's worth it. I mean, you run it. It's a blue staple. A staple card means that it goes in every deck. Then Guardian Project's a green staple. It reads, whenever a creature comes into play, as long as it doesn't share a name with a creature in your graveyard, you draw a card. It's an excellent card that's literally handmade for Commander or Brawl, any sort of singleton format. Great Henge. Whenever a creature comes into play, you put a 1/1 counter on it and draw a card, and then it taps for 2 green mana, and it gains you 2 life. Then we put in a few removals. We put in Master's Rebuke and Bite Down and Cosmic Hunger. Cosmic Hunger, they're all basically the same card, except Cosmic Hunger can hit battles, which is an additional card type, and Master Rebuke and Bite Down are both the exact same card. You target one of your creatures, and then you target one of their creatures or planeswalkers. It deals its damage equal to that. So if it's like a 4/4, it deals 4 damage to whatever you target. Cyclonic Rift, it can bounce a permanent that your opponent controls, target non-land permanent, but if you overload it, it bounces all their permanents, so it's a board wipe. River's Rebuke's the same way. You target your opponent, so you have to be able to target your opponent, but it bounces everything that they don't, that's not a land. Titan Ministry is an excellent finisher. He's a 7/7 with reach and trample, and he reads when he enters the battlefield, choose 2. You make a 4/4 Rhino, put a shield counter on something, destroy target artifact or enchantment, or gain 5 life. Flashing Brontodon got a sick new art. We didn't actually get it yet in this video, but you should check out the new art, it's sweet. You can sacrifice him and destroy a target artifact or enchantment. And he is a 3/4, so he's just kind of good. Questing Beast has a big block attacks. Basically, he stops damage from being prevented, can't be blocked by power 2 or less, and whenever he deals damage to a player, he also deals that much damage to a planeswalker. Rampaging Raptor is like the exact same thing, except he can target battles. And then the Questing Druid has a this red side, and then he's a creature that's a 1/1. Whenever you cast a 9 green spell, he gets a 1/1 counter. Fairly Seer is a 1-drop that when you play him, he's a flying 1/1 that scries 2. So he helps you like look for lands and stuff. In the early game, is an excellent card. A lot of blue decks can stand to run him and not feel bad about it. Although Fairly Seer is he's a bit of a weird card. He can exile a card, then you put time counters on it, and then after its time counters are up, so he suspends things, is what it's called. And once its time counters are up, you play the card for free, and then if it's a creature, it gains haste, which means it can act right away, so it can attack and tap, and use abilities, whatever, right away. That's what haste means. Contagious Vorak, he's a little 3/3 pig, and he's a common, so, never mind, he's an uncommon. But when you play him, you look at the top 4 cards of your library, you can put a land into your hand. If you don't, you proliferate. Proliferate means you take one counter of any type of counter on anything, including players, and then add an additional counter to that. So counter planeswalkers, alt faster, etc. Make your team bigger if they have 1/1 counters. Then we play Topari Stomper. Whenever you play him, he grabs a basic land from your deck, you put it in play tapped, and then he can't attack or block unless you have 7 lands. So, he's got a pretty big restriction on him. Ragavan, probably one of the most powerful 1-drops in Magic's history. He's a 2/1 monkey that whenever he hits your opponent, you exile the top card of their library, and you can play it that turn, and he makes you a treasure token, which taps for 1 mana. It's a 1-time mana rock. And you can dash him for 2, which means he gains haste, and then after he's done dashing, at the end of the turn, you put him back in your hand. He's universally probably one of the strongest 1-drop creatures in the entire game, if not possibly the strongest. Like, he is absurdly powerful. So obviously every red deck should run him, unfortunately. He's one of those instant staples. Mars Fiber works really well with the bite spells, like Bite Down, Cosmic Hunger, whatever. He's got Death Touch. That means whatever amount of damage he deals to the creature is enough to destroy it and send it to the graveyard. Kog'Maw, the first Kog'Maw we put in, not the second one, enters the battlefield and can fight target creatures, and then whenever he swings, he can pop an artifact or enchantment. The second one, you can discard him for 4 mana, which pops an artifact or enchantment, draws a card, and then when he enters the battlefield, you can choose one. It fights target creature, and I believe it gives like Trample and Menace or something to your team. And then Yadiro, the original version of him, you can cycle him, and if you cycle him 4 times, you put him out for free. But we just play him because he's a haste 8/8 trampler. So, I'm playing all the old primals here. First one we put in is the 2 Atalis. The first Atali is whenever he attacks, you exile the top card of each player's library, and you can cast all of them for free. Second one is Nezahal, the Primal Tide. That's the second primal we put in. Whenever your opponent casts 9 creature spells, you can draw cards. And he's just a 7/7, and then he has an effect where you can discard 3 cards to your hand, and he exiles himself from the board, and comes back at the end of the turn, so he can dodge removal. Atali Primal Conqueror, on cast, when he enters the battlefield, he exiles the top card of each player's library until he hits a spell. So it's each player's library, and he doesn't stop at lands. And you can cast all those spells for free. Galta Primal Hunger is a 12/12 with Trample that costs like 13 mana, but if you have whatever amount of power you have on the board, reduces her colorless mana cost, so she can cost 2/2. She can be a 2/2 with 12/12 with Trample. Insane. And then Primal Adversary, he can turn lands into 3/3 hasters. Like, you can pay extra mana and turn so many lands into 3/3 hasters, so he's kind of a finisher if you put enough mana into him. Otherwise, he's just a 3/4 wolf. Nothing too crazy. Then we put in Illuna, the Ceaseless Hunger. When you cast him, you can target 2 opponents your opponents control and straight up exile them. And then when he attacks, he exiles the top 20 cards of your opponent's library, so he's a mill card. And he's just a big dumb 10/10 and indestructible. Last card is Tyranno Rex. He's got haste, Trample, Ward 4, Toxic 4, and so he's a win condition. Ward 4 means he costs an additional 4 to target. Toxic 4 means whenever he deals damage, he puts 4 poison counters on a player. A player with 10 poison counters is instantly defeated.
Alright, this is our first match against Ice Cold Urizen, playing against Atali Primal Conqueror. Usually these lists ramp. What ramp does is it causes you to play cards earlier than you should. That's what, when I say ramp in Magic, that's what I'm talking about. Like a ramp deck attempts to play more lands or creatures that give you what's called mana, which mana means you're playing more cards, or cards earlier than you should. So anyways, we start off with a Gruul fast land. That means it comes into play untapped if we have 2 or less lands. And we play Ragavan right away, so we're in a really good position. And they play no blocker because they're playing Ramp. Ramp is a really strong archetype, usually, and especially in Brawl, because Ramp loses to itself because a Ramp card doesn't really do much of anything by itself. But when a Ramp card, when you're playing Ramp in Brawl, its self-defeating aspect is minimized. Let's put it like that. They play Sevla, Heart of the Wild. She's a 2-2 that, whenever a creature comes into play, if it has the greatest power among creatures, you can draw a card. That happens every time, so it's just kind of annoying. I don't really think it's that great. It's just kind of annoying, honestly. Anyways, we're digging here, and we take a land. We take the Simic Manland. A Manland means it's a creature and a land. So, Restless Vinestalk is a 5/5 that when it attacks, it grants turns a creature into a base 3/3. So, anyways, Kogla comes down, fights our monkey and wins because he's a bigger monkey. So, and then they draw a card off of Sevla's effect. We play Questing Beast here, which has a big mountain of text, which is Death Touch Vigilance can't be blocked by power 2 or less, and when it deals damage to a player, it deals that much damage to a planeswalker, and damage can't be prevented. Our damage can't be prevented. Our little enchantment there, the card on the side there is Primal Empathy, and it basically is like Sevla, where if we have the strongest creature power-wise at the start of the turn, we get to draw a card for free. They play their Atali here, and then they run into a Mana Dweeb, a Llanowar Elves, which is a 1/1 that just adds green mana. Sevla keeps triggering, and they take our Sea Dasher Octopus, which does draw them cards. And if we don't have the strongest creature on the board, Primal Empathy gives us 1/1 counters, which 1/1 counters permanently make a creature 1/1/1 bigger, as long as they're still on the creature. There's plenty of ways to remove counters, and if you remove the creature, it doesn't keep its counters. Once it goes to the graveyard, it loses them. Unless there's like one creature that does keep their stuff. We pass it over to our opponent, and they play a temple first, which is a Gruul temple, which means it produces red and green, and scrying 1 means you look at the top card of your library, you can either keep it at the top or put it at the bottom. They tap down Sevla. Sevla gives them 7 green mana because she gives green mana based on your biggest creature's power. And then they attack us with Atali, which whenever he deals damage, we get that many poison counters. And he gives us 11 poison counters, which instantly defeats us.
Alright, our next match is up against Krusty again. It's a Atali Primal Conqueror list. This one we win. Which, if you notice with these Atali Primal Conqueror decks, they're literally all the same. Because all you have to do is ramp them out, because Atali can literally win you the game by himself. So darn near every deck you see with him will literally always be the same. Mana Dweeb. A Mana Dweeb is a small creature that makes mana. That's what we call them, is Mana Dweebs. We have to play nothing there because I don't think we really had anything to play. They play Heraldic Banner, which is a mana rock, and it gives whatever declared color. Oh no, we flash an octopus here, but it gives whatever declared color an additional 1 attack. Sea Dasher Octopus is a 2/2 that when we attack, he draws us a card if he makes contact with a player. So as long as he deals combat damage to a player, he draws us a card. So he has to have more than 0 attack. Topari Stomper here, we get a little bit of lag, but we drop him down and grab a land. We opt to go for a green. So we play that down. And we send Sea Dasher on its way. Sea Dasher connects, draws us a card. We say go. We draw what's called a Gem Razor. Gem Razor, when he mutates onto a creature, he destroys a target artifact or enchantment and sends it to the graveyard. He pops one. Beanstalk Giant just grabs him a land. And then the other side of him is he's as big as many lands as you control. So if you have 7 lands, he's a 7/7, etc. If you have 5 lands, he's a 5/5. If you have 9 lands, he's a 9/9. Topari Stomper. We're contemplating on where to mutate Gem Razor onto. We go for the Sea Dasher Octopus instead, because I was worried with mutate, because mutate's kind of a complicated mechanic, but it basically replaces the top text of a card. But I wasn't 100% sure, because Topari Stomper can't attack or block unless we have 7 lands, which we don't have, and we want to apply the pressure early, because that's the way you beat Atali and ramp lists like this. Is you just kick him out of the game right away, like you have to remove the player. And Atali, like I said, is the type of card that he literally wins the game by himself. It literally takes like 3 brain cells to run this list. That's it. Like, it's not that hard of a list to play. If you want some really easy wins in Magic, like sometimes, yeah, you will lose, but half the time if you want some really easy wins in Magic, just play Atali Primal Conqueror and pretend like you're good at the game. That's all you have to do. Anyways, they pop our enchantment because they swipe our Titan of Industry on cast of Atali. We're not too worried about it, because I think here we're at 6 mana, so we can cast River's Rebuke. And they make the 4/4 Rhino. Now normally if I wasn't already at 6 mana, I'd probably be a little bit worried, but River's Rebuke, we target them, that bounces all their permanents back to our hands, or the hands of the owners, because we own Titan of Industry. It came from our deck, it bounces back to our hand. We're the owner of the card, so that matters. They only have 6 mana, so they can't just play Atali again. Because an owner of a card is wherever its deck it came from, like who actually physically owns the card. Like, oh, it came from our deck, so we're the owner. And usually if you have bounce effects in card games, if you're the owner of it, you get the card back. You put it back into your deck or your hand, wherever you own it from. And if a player is defeated, all their own cards return back to them, even if they're on the battlefield or in the graveyard or in exile. They go ahead and play a Lotus Cobra. Whenever you play a land, he can give you 1 mana of any color that you pick. And then they play a Goldspan Dragon, which is a 4/4 dragon with haste and flying, that whenever he attacks, he makes a treasure token. And when he makes treasure tokens, like any treasure tokens that you have, you actually get 2 mana out of your treasure tokens instead of 1. So he's actually a treasure token amplifier. He makes them better. We draw, and we have 8 cards in hand. The maximum hand size in Magic without like altering it is 7. So once you have more than 7 cards at the end of your turn, you have to discard a card. They swipe our Kuema's Awakening, and then they play Settle the Wilds, which is a ramp spell. It seeks out a land. Seek is an arena-only mechanic. It just takes the top land that it sees first in the deck and then puts it into play. And then it can grab cards from your deck based on the number of lands you have as like its second effect. It's kind of like another Cultivate, basically. Think of it as another Cultivate. Turn of the Wild Speaker, they go ahead and choose the first mode on it, which is you draw cards equal to the greatest power of a non-human creature you have. Otherwise, it gives non-humans 3/3 and trample. So it's a win condition or a big draw spell. It's actually really good. Unless you're playing humans. Then it's not good. We play Yadaro here, Wandering Monster. He's an 8/8 with Trample and Haste. So Haste means he can act right away. They have to block Yadaro here with a Tali, but they double block Yadaro. Because you can do that. You can send as many blockers to block as a creature as you want, unless it says otherwise on the card. And they do take out Yadaro, but we get what's called a 2-for-1, where our one creature destroyed 2 of their creatures in combat and won. That's good. But that's part of the reason why we play Yadaro. He's actually a pretty decent win con in red decks, because an 8/8 is big. Like, that's really, really big for a lot of decks to actually deal with. And he's got haste. And you can cycle him early so he can kind of draw you into the stuff that we need. This is the last turn that they take because we're about to win here. They get Magda Brazen Outlaw. Whenever she attacks, she makes treasure tokens. They steal our Atali Primal Conqueror, so they get to do it again. His ETB, but it doesn't matter. I was a little bit worried here, but it doesn't matter, so. Then they have Cosmic Hunger, which does remove our big flyer, which would have been a problem, but they're only at 1 health anyways. Because if they weren't, I would have quit. Like, just to be fair. That's the problem with Atali, is just like kind of just how unfair this card is, because he literally just wins the game by himself. He doesn't need any other cards. And they concede, so that's good.
Alright, our next match is up against Elite Terror. We win this one well because, again, we're up against an Atali Primal Conqueror list. We fought this card like literally 5 times this day that we streamed. Pretty much like literally outside maybe 2 matches that we had. We were playing up against Atali Primal Conqueror that day. So he's a popular commander because, like I said before in the last part, he's really not that hard of a deck to play. He's very good for new players who want to pick up wins because he's just downright unfair. A lot of his aspects are unfair. And the deck is not actually that hard to build, or pilot, or anything like that. Literally just race out Atali, that's all you have to do. That's literally your entire game plan, is get him out as fast as you can. And then, we go ahead and play our C-Octopus, he connects. We draw an island, and then we play it. That's what the blue sources are called. They're called islands. Then we play Alundo the Sealer. He has a suspend effect where you can suspend a card in your hand, and it gets time counters on it, and then you remove time counters from it. And if it's a creature, when its time counters come off, it has haste. But otherwise, you cast the spell for free. I might take another crack at making this guy's deck Alundo, because he's pretty cool, but he kind of like wants like not super expensive cards, but really efficient cards that are right around 3 or 4 mana, I think, might be the best way to do them. Because if you're waiting 7 turns, because there's no real way to interact with his counters and, like, remove them. So, like, waiting 7 turns for a card, like, that's just not optimal. Unless, like, it's like a 7 mana or 8 mana win condition, like a Craterhoof Behemoth or something like that. We go ahead and mutate here, Illuna onto our C-Octopus. So we put the card onto the battlefield, we get a Primal Adversary, which he's just a 4/3. Then we swing. Like, we're really just beating them down here. They're down to 1 life, so next turn we win. We already have lethal on board. And there's no way that they can save themselves. So they go ahead and play Vastwood Surge. It's a land ramp spell. Put 2 lands into play. Get Lotus Color to trigger twice. And we went first, and we just kind of promoted way too much damage for them to handle. They opt to swing here. Delete a Wild Mage when she attacks. You can pick a creature and then you roll dice. And you make a copy of it. And then if you hit like 14, you roll again. And if you hit like a perfect 20, because it's based off the D&D book games, you get like so many copies of the creature. It's like copies them twice again. Anyways, we finish off here, and that's the close of the game. So good game, opponent. This next match, we're up against Chris 234, excuse me. We lose this one. We're playing up against Mono White, the DF Font of Hope. She's an Angel's Payoff. She's a 2/2 with Flying and Vigilance, and then she can tap for 1 white mana that you can only use to cast Angels. And she gives Angels 1/1 counters based on the number of Angels there already are. So when you play her, and you play an Angel on side of her, it gets a 1/1 counter. If there's 5 Angels already in play, the next Angel you cast comes into play with 5 extra 1/1 counters. They go a Smothering Tithe here, which means every time we draw a card, we can either pay 2 or give them a treasure token. It's a ramp piece, and kind of like what's called a stacks piece, which prison decks play. A prison deck is a deck that attempts to stop you playing the game in some way, shape, or form. We just saw it coming there, so we counter it. They play a Mana Rock and File. It's kind of a little bit of a complicated Mana Rock, but if you have less than 1 card in hand, you draw 2, and if you have less than 5 life, you whenever you gain life, you gain twice as much life. We go ahead and Master's Rebuke the Gadia with our 2/2, which means we pick him, pick Gadia, deal 2 damage to it. Is what Master's Rebuke does. There's a lot of cards that do that pretty much the exact same thing, so. We go ahead and swing with our Sea Dasher Octopus first, because there isn't any reason not to. Then we mutate onto him with Lord Dracus, and we pick up Master's Rebuke again. To kind of stop if the Gadia does come down, we can just get rid of her again. Heraldic Banner declares white, because they're mono white, so they're only playing 1 color and colorless cards. Because there are cards in Magic that have no color. Here we're thinking possibly mutating. But first we're going to Master's Rebuke. Hit the Gadia out of the sky. Remove her. They put her back into the command zone. We swing and draw a card here. We get a land. And we didn't have an extra green. We only had 1 green, so we couldn't cast a Migratory Greathorn. They play Cosmos Elixir here. What that card does is it gains you 2 life at the end of your turn and scries 1, unless you're above your starting life total, and then at which point it just draws you a card. We go ahead and mutate, grabbing the Master's Rebuke again, because remember when you mutate, you get all the mutate effects underneath it. Basically, mutate is kind of like a Voltron type of card. What Voltron means is you're taking 1 creature and making it as powerful as humanly possible. Because mutators inherit keywords, which means like trample, flying, first strike, whatever, and they copy the stats of the card that's on top of it, and then any mutate effects, depending on how many mutates have happened, they all go onto the stack and trigger all at the exact same time. So then you order the stacks on the trigger. Mutate's one of the more like complicated mechanics. It really deserves at least like a 3 to 5 minute segment on explaining what it does. They go ahead and play White Sun's Twilight here, which reads when you pay, it destroys all creatures, but if you paid 7 mana total, because X equals 5 or more, if you pay 7 mana total, you also create 5 1/1 mites, which they actually create 7 there, so they get 7 of them. The 1/1 mites all have Toxic 1, so when they deal damage, they give us a poison counter. Which remember, when we had 10 poison counters, we're instantly defeated. Any player is instantly defeated at 10 poison counters. And there's no way of removing poison counters en masse in this game at all. I think there's 1 card that can do it. It's called Sun Cleanser, and it's a white card. It's like the only card that can actually do it. I kind of wish we had an extra way of dealing with poison counters like in colorless, but fortunately Wizards never gave us that, which Wizards is the people who make the game Magic, which is unfortunate. We go ahead and mutate here as Sawtusk Demolisher. We want him under because we don't want to lose flying and trample. And then we forget that Sawtooth Demolisher cannot destroy creatures. And then we get a 12/12 in Galta. We mutate again with Everquill Phoenix. It seems like we were kind of coming back, but fortunately not so much. It's because they had all the poison counters. And we got a Titan of Industry here. We're really starting to come back here, but unfortunately we still lose. And we destroy target artifact or enchantment, which is one of their little poison dudes, because they are considered artifacts. Because cards can be multiple types of cards. But this is where it really kind of seals our fate, is Avacyn, Angel of Hope. She gives your entire board besides herself, which she has indestructible anyways, but she gives your entire board indestructible, meaning you can't be destroyed. So damage can't destroy you, cards that say destroy can't destroy you. It's just indestructible. It's pretty self-explanatory. We go ahead and use the Bonder's Enclave here to draw a card, to kind of dig for answers. So, we play Questing Druid here, using his draw effect because it exile draws. What those cards are doing is they're sitting in exile, but we can only play them for one turn. That's what that does. So they don't actually permanently stay in our hand. He only had Sun Crown. He's a god. He can give things what's called lifelink, so as much damage as they deal, they gain. And they play our Cleansing, and being as they have Indestructible, they just win the game on the spot here, because they swing into an open board. Regardless of the poison, they defeat us with damage, and that's all she wrote. Then we're on to the next one. Next one will be the last game.
Alright, this is the last match of the night. Thank you for your time if you come this far. This is up against Listen to My Heart. And they go first, but we end up winning this one. Because going first kind of matters in this game because a lot of stuff's really strong nowadays. We have a really good opening hand. We got 3 lands, and we got removal. We got 2 removal, 3 lands, and 2 creatures. That's usually like the kind of opening hand you want to look for. The only problem is we don't have any blue sources. We have counter spells, so. But idealistically, the perfect hand in this game is 3 lands, 2 creatures that you usually can probably play by like turn 3, at least one of them on like turn 1, turn 2, and then another one by turn 3. And then 2 removal pieces, usually a lower like cost of removal that will remove one of your opponent's like early game creatures or possibly artifact or enchantment, and then a bigger removal that can kind of deal with whatever later comes down the line. Anyways, we play Ragavan here for its dash. Remember, it gives it haste, and then if it survives, it gets bounced back to the hand. They go ahead and trade here because they don't want to take the hit from Ragavan. Because Ragavan exiles the top part of the library, we can play, and then it gives us the treasure token. Which more importantly, we got the treasure token. They play the Wobbly Radiant Champion, which she can gain loyalty counters, which is the type of counters that Planeswalkers use to use their abilities. They're called loyalty counters. And her +1 gives her 1 loyalty counter and an additional loyalty counter for each creature that you have. Her -1, you look at the number of creatures you have and pick one of them, and it gets XX, which is equal to the number of creatures you have. And then her -8 means you get an emblem, which is uninteractable, like you can't interact with it at all. And it means whenever a creature comes into play, you can draw a card. Be that as it's a May ability, because if you run out of cards, like you have no cards in your deck and you go to draw, you lose the game instead. You automatically lose the game. This is what's called melting out your opponent. So, Wobbly is a very strong card. I usually play a commander's list around her. You'll probably eventually, as you're watching this channel, you'll probably see her be played in my command zone quite a few times, because she's a very powerful commander if you can get her off and get her emblem early enough and you're just peeling through your deck like a madman. We can't mutate here because the Lundo is a human, so idealistically in these lists you probably should like try and avoid, if not outright not play humans at all, which is pretty easy. We go ahead and play Day of Judgment, which for 4 mana destroys all creatures. A little bit bummed out here, but it is what it is. They plus a Wobbly. She's getting dangerously close to ultimating. When I say an ultimate on a Planeswalker, it's usually their best ability. Usually most of their ultimates either win the game on the spot, or they get you into the point where you can start winning the game from there quite easily. They play a card called Maraud's Wake, which that card gives all the creatures 1/1, and then every time they tap a land for mana, they get 2 mana instead of just 1, which is really good. Luckily we play Yajaro and Kogla here, which we pop the enchantment, send him back into our deck, and then draw a card. We get a land here, we get a Gruul land. We don't want to deal with the Hawaii at all. We're trying to save Iconic Rift because you can pay 7 mana for a total, and board wipe your opponent means that gets rid of all their stuff, which is really good. If they get way ahead of us, you need a board wipe to come back into the game, otherwise we'll lose. They go ahead and play their commander here, which is Shorsani's Portland. She gives you 2 1/1 lifelinkers. She gives each other creature you control 1/1/1, and a secondary ability of hers that's rarely ever talked about is at the end of the turn, every single creature that a target player, every player owns, goes back to their side of the board. Which means like the color blue has a lot of what's called theft effects, which you can steal your opponent's stuff, and then if that ability triggers, you return all those stolen things back to their owner. And remember, the owner is the person who brought the card to the table. That's who the owner is. We have Ristic starting out, so they gotta pay an extra 1 unless they want us to draw cards. That's why everyone's like, you pay the 1. If you see a lot of other Magic content, and they're like, oh, you pay the 1. This is the card that they're making fun of. Because this card is absolutely absurd. Anyways, they pay the 1 twice. So they play the card Wedding Announcement, which is an anthem when it flips. An anthem means it gives a stat boost. It gives a stat boost of 1/1. And if you don't attack with 2 creatures, you get a creature. If you attack with 2 or more creatures before it flips, you draw a card. And we play our commander. We were going to mutate it to give Terran Rex flying, but we don't need to. There are 8 poison counters, so you'll see why we put Terran Rex into the deck. Because again, remember, poison counters, if the opponent of our player has 10 or more, they're instantly removed from the game, or instantly defeated. They play their Watley, they pay the 1. So they're about to give this guy big here. They turn him into a 6/6, but life total doesn't matter because we're doing poison damage. So they send their whole team. We go ahead and do what's called eating the creature, where our creature is way bigger than their creature, and it's a free block. And then they concede there, so it's a good game because of the poison counters.
So thank you for your time. I really do appreciate you guys watching this. And there's my links. Click the buttons, and you have a wonderful day. Stay safe out there. Thank you. Bye-bye.